Thank you very much, Geshe, for gracing us with your presence today. And I invite Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra to please take the session forward.
Well, brevity is the soul of wit, and I don't want to take up time between the words of a great master and all of us here, except to express my deep personal gratitude and appreciation to Geshe La. In addition to that, the Foundation, Geshe La has been very kind and generous to the Foundation for many decades in offering us and our community and Sangha teachings. And I, for one, have found them personally extremely valuable because of his remarkable ability to make complex issues simple while retaining their authenticity in everyday language. So thank you, Geshe La, for this blessing that you give all of us by giving us so preciously of your time. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, Rajivji, LPG, and all the participants, especially my favorite Gurukul students. This teaching is primarily organized for the benefit of Gurukul students. Gurukul students are Indian university-going students who have been since 2012 visiting Dharamsala in different groups. And during those visits, I made it a point and also made the suggestion that they should study at least some sessions of Buddhist philosophical classes. So since then, they have all attended my talks for at least 5-6 sessions. So now, at the suggestion of Rajivji and the Foundation for Universal Responsibility, they wanted me to meet them again online and talk a little bit about meditation, mindfulness, and so forth. So as a kind of introduction, first we have 3 days, and the first day, the suggested topic was guided meditation practices from Buddhism. It will be easier to teach guided meditation if we are all together physically. Online, it may be not that easy, but I will just, as much as possible, say something about it also. But as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, that the most important thing for us to start with is to have this basic understanding and awareness that we all want happiness, do not want suffering. And as far as happiness is concerned, it is something that we want as long as possible. We are not satisfied with short-term happinesses. But unfortunately, because of our die-hard habit, we go for shortcut, not even happiness. We make shortcut for 5 minutes pleasure and sacrifice the long-term happiness. That is something that happens day after day, year after year. And it is because of this addiction to fleeting pleasures that we are not really able to make any advancement in our spiritual happiness, spiritual advancement, and thereby happiness. So therefore, it is important to go a little bit into the depth of Buddha's teaching, which is basically talking about the law, different facets of law of nature, by whose understanding, and especially if you're somebody who undergoes, deeper practice, study, meditation, and thereby, if you're able to develop some conviction in these teachings, then there will be seeable transformations in your life. Because as far as transformation of the mind is concerned, it's not something that you can achieve. It is not something that achieve. In other words, there is no push button enlightenment. There is no instant coffee or instant spiritual enlightenment. So therefore, it is important to study. That's one thing that I wanted to say. And then the next thing relevant to the Gurukul student is, I want to say a little bit about the Indic religion, which includes the Nalanda tradition, which His Holiness speaks about very often. And the Indic religion or Nalanda tradition basically has this very special feature of diversity and plurality. And these are also religions of dialogue. And thereby many of the ancient writings are secular writings, which are also absorbing and replete with wisdom. So it's important to have some understanding about this. And as I said, these ancient religious teachings, including Buddhism, are dialogue religions, which means the teachers do teach the students, but it is not one-sided teaching. After the teaching, then there is a very serious discussion and dialogue, question answer session. So I think that is very, very important, because you can't hope to understand anything if you personally do not engage and participate in these teachings, right? Okay. So there is this flexibility and adaptability to changing situations. That is what is needed. And especially in the case of Buddhist teaching, the Buddhist teaching is basically based on the law of nature. That is one thing that is really, really important. The law of nature is basically perennial. When you talk about impermanence, when you talk about interdependent origination, and whatever you talk about, it is basically perennial, right? Although on the one hand, we talk about adapting to the changing situations, but actually law of nature is changing, but in a way not changing. Impermanence has been there, and impermanence is there right now, and impermanence will be there forever. Therefore, the Buddha said, whether the Buddhists come or not, the natural phenomena is emptiness. So similarly, I can dare to say that whether the Buddhas come or not, the law of nature is impermanence. The law of nature is interdependent origination. The law of nature functions on harmony, right? So these are very few basic, very important perennial teachings which we must understand. Actually, there's not much need to go into depth on such topics. The only thing that is really needed is we should have this interest and curiosity to go deeper. We all have this capacity to think. And the problem is normally we don't think. We just run after crowd, and especially in today's world, there are so many distractions all around. So wherever there is a distraction, we all go after that distraction and go after this, as I said, 5-minute pleasure. So there is really no room for us to go within ourselves, our mind, and explore the richness, the resources that is there, in a sense, that is there intact, without having been touched. So that's the problem. That's the problem. So therefore, at the very outset, what I really would like to urge is that, as the Buddha said, I have shown you the path to Nirvana. Nirvana is up to you. Unless we make the effort, unless we make the attempt, we are going to achieve nothing. Just by listening to the teaching is good, but it will not take you very far. I've shown you the path to liberation. Liberation is up to you. That's what the Buddha said. And the Buddha also said, I'm your teacher, you have to act. And the Buddha also said, the Buddhas do not wash the sins of sentient beings by water. The Buddhas cannot remove the sufferings of sentient beings by their hand. Buddhas cannot transfer their realization into the mind of others. The Buddhas can only show the path of the truth, suchness. And if you follow that path of truth and suchness, you can be liberated. You will get enlightened. But if you don't do that, then it's like going into a restaurant, ask for the menu, read all the menu, and don't eat anything. And you go empty stomach, right? So actually these days I really, in a way, I have to talk because people ask me to talk. But in a way, I don't feel like talking, you see. In very few words, we can say the things which we must practice and implement. There's something that I want to say. Because you have been, I'm definite that you have been reading so many books. You all have been listening to so many teachers. But now it's time to check how much progress we have made over the years or over the months, right? So that's really, really important. So there's one thing that I wanted to say right in the beginning. And the second thing is that the important role played by the Indian and Tibetans in preserving this very ancient Indian tradition. Nalanda tradition, as His Holiness emphasizes repeatedly, is basically a Sanskrit tradition, which has so much logic and epistemology. And His Holiness says, I have written it down here for my memory. So this Nalanda tradition, which talks so much about logic and epistemology, His Holiness says, this is like sharp teeth by which you can bite the tough philosophical ideas. So when it comes to understanding the deep philosophical ideas, unless you develop an unbiased mind, use logic and epistemology, it is impossible to understand that. Right? Now, for example, how does that kind of knowledge benefits? For example, in the case of Tibetans, Tibetans are experiencing great tragedy. They have experienced great tragedy, and we are still experiencing great tragedy. But because of embracing such teachings, to a great extent, we are able to transform the misfortune into favorable practices. So there is another very important practice that is found in the mind training session. Mind training, if you are able to properly train the mind, which basically means changing your mental outlook. Much of the suffering that we encounter are basically unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering means if you had adopted the right attitude, you do not have to undergo those sufferings. But because of our ignorance, confusion, lack of understanding, we suffer unnecessarily, right? So now, because of His Holiness and the Tibetan teachers coming into exile, there is interest in Buddhism throughout the world. And we are very proud of it. Not in the sense we get more followers, not in the sense that the number of Buddhist practitioners are increasing, but in the sense that many people are getting benefited. So whether you call it Tibetan cultural heritage or Nalanda heritage, this is a world cultural heritage. Just this morning, I had a TV interview. There was a question asking about the importance of Tibetan culture. So there also I mentioned that this Tibetan culture is not just to keep the Tibetan identity as an individual survival or extinction of that individual personalities. For me, not very important. What is important is the culture, the civilization, which has the capacity to bring peace, harmony, and happiness in today's turbulent world. That's not only important, but this is, according to His Holiness, this is urgent that we must find a way to live in harmony, to adopt this moral ethics. So that is why he's talking so much about the C learning, the social emotional learning or secular ethics. Right? So I suppose intelligent people follow the Nalanda tradition. So those of you who are attending and the Foundation for Universal Responsibility who is organizing this, I think we can be counted as belonging to the intelligent groups. If you read many of the Buddhist compositions and teachings, they would say that you found this precious human life. Not only you found this precious human life, but you also have this keen interest in understanding the Buddha's teaching. Therefore, you are a very privileged person, a very lucky, fortunate person. Why we are sitting here while you can go out and go up and down, go to the market and have a cup of tea and experience the fresh air, things like that. Why you are sitting here? Because you have a special mental capacity attuned to this kind of teachings. So it's important to, first of all, recognize ourselves lucky. First of all, we have obtained this precious human life. And secondly, we are not wasting this precious human life and trying hard to make it meaningful. That's important. Now, when it comes to the words like mindfulness, meditation, there are so many books that is already written, things like that. But what I'm talking about is all the teachings of Buddha are for meditation. It's not that some part of the teachings of the Buddha are for meditation, some are not for meditation. It's not like that. And then also the question of mindfulness. Mindfulness means not just alertness, but mindfulness means be mindful of adopting the good things, practicing the good things. It's not only awareness, it's not only paying attention to something, but it is really mindful of doing the things that you should be doing and not doing the things which you should not be doing. So that kind of mindfulness is really, really important, right? So meditation again means getting habituated. Getting habituated with what? With negative emotions? No, we don't have to get habituated. We're already expert when it comes to negative emotions like anger, jealousy, and so forth. It will just shoot out from your mind whenever there is a slight provocation. But the difficult area is the virtuous practices, qualities, development of loving kindness, compassion, patience, and so forth, where our habit is very weak. So there we need to get habituated, right? So therefore, it is important to understand these teachings of the Buddha. And also at the outset, I wanted to say, as I said, that we are compelled to live in harmony, live with nature. How are you going to live with nature? By fighting with the nature or living in harmony with the nature? It's your choice. The Buddhist teaching is basically saying, live in accordance with the law of nature, live in harmony with the law of nature, live in harmony with other people. Right? So therefore, in order to live in harmony with the nature, you need to understand the law of nature, the different facets of law of nature, impermanence, interdependent origination, emptiness, and so forth. And then also what is being now today found in quantum physics, quantum mechanics, whatever. It's very important. Because much of the disruptions and problems, as I repeatedly said, is because of lack of understanding. We don't understand how closely we are connected to each other. We don't understand how fragile. We need to know the law of impermanence because we don't know how fragile we are. Impermanence means fragility. If you understand your fragility, you will naturally take more care of it. If it is not long-lasting, then you need to take more care of it and use the opportunity when it is at your disposal. Right? For example, when you grow quite old like me, then you need to be very careful saying that, okay, I need to use the remaining part of my life. It's very, 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 very less time. You have to be careful. So even otherwise, there is no definiteness in terms of our age, how long we are going to live. There is actually no order who will die first, the young ones or elder ones, you see. Right? So therefore, it's a golden opportunity to seize this very moment and use this precious human life. So once you properly understand that there is no room for postponement, because the Lord of Death will not postpone your life. They will not come and seek appointment with you, saying that when do you want to die? Then according to your choice, you can't say, okay, I wanted to live 200 years and then die. You can't make that choice, right? Right? So therefore, it is really, really important. That's why we talk about living in the present moment. Don't get lost in the past. Many of us are lost in the past. think about what has happened in the past, recall it, and then it's like playing a very, very old movie again and again, you see. And then by just recalling it, sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are crying, things like that. We are just wasting our time. What you have experienced in the past is like a dream that you had last night. So still, if you keep on dreaming, you will never wake up. So these Buddhist teachings are saying, don't keep on sleeping, don't keep on dreaming, wake up. Wake up to the reality of the law of nature. Wake up to this interdependent connection. Wake up to the law of impermanence, law of causality, and so forth. So therefore, if you really engage in study, and then more importantly, meditation and practice, your life will be transformed like anything. Happiness is a choice. It's in your hand. So don't expect that your happiness will come from outside, from your beloved friends or from your relatives, from financial success and things like that. No. It is basically in your hand. So therefore, it is important to understand these various facets of law of nature. For example, in Buddhism, we talk about different laws of nature, the laws of nature that is obvious, that is not so obvious, that is completely hidden. We need to explore all this, right? And then also the knowledge how your mind engages with the object, right? So therefore, the true truth, four noble truth, and so forth. It's important to understand this. So therefore, in Buddhism in general, and especially for the Nalanda masters of classical Indian in particular, when it comes to examining the nature of reality, the evidence of direct perception is accorded greatest authority, then both reason-based inference and scripture. Reason is very important, as I mentioned already. Scripture is also, citation from scripture is also important. But at the end of the day, you should be able to develop the conviction based on your personal experience. This is like you're seeing this glass of water. Once you directly perceive this glass of water, then nobody will change you. Nobody can change your mind. Even if 100 people come and say this is not glass of water. So our understanding should be so precise and good that you have conviction and then follow the direction of that knowledge, that understanding. That's important. Okay? So this method of inquiry, one that draws inference about not only the observable, but also unobservable, such as atomic particles, based on observed facts that are evident to our direct perception, that is shared by both Buddhism and science. And then with the help of science, what can be observed by the senses is enhanced by means of these experiments, allowing scientists to gain new inferences about various facts. In Buddhism, however, empirical observation is not confined to the five senses alone. It has a wider meaning, since it includes observations derived from meditation by using the mental consciousness. I was many years back reading that very famous text by a great Indian tantric, Guhaya Garbha. So in that, there is a stanza where he says, of all the knowledge of material substance is poor knowledge. Of all the knowledge of material substance, how the world is formed, how your brain functions, all this knowledge of the physical material object is poor knowledge. It's not a great knowledge. It may be essential, but not a great knowledge from the perspective of that great master. And he says, if you have proper, precise knowledge of your mind, your consciousness, that is rich knowledge. And I'm very tempted to support that understanding by that great master, especially in today's world. We are so materialistic, including the scientists. What we are exploring is the material world. Whether you talk about metaverse or you talk about artificial intelligence, whatever you are talking about, you are basically talking about the material world. How much happiness we can get from this material world is very much dependent upon the enjoyer, the human beings, the sentient beings in general, especially the human beings. Right? So therefore, I have been repeatedly saying, quoting basically some of His Holiness teachings, that if the problems of the world is to be solved, it cannot be solved by religion. It cannot be solved by science. It can be solved only by man himself or herself. It is in our hand. This, however powerful and sophisticated any technological equipment may be, but basically we are the ones who is using it. Unfortunately or fortunately, in today's world, there is a sense that gradually the robots and other technical parts will play the role of human beings. But then again, question arises, why you are using these technical equipments like robots? For whom? In that very process, if you completely ignore and do away with the human beings, then what is the fun of creating all this? You see? So whether it's religious practice or technological achievement, these are supposed to be serving, from Buddhist point of view, all sentient beings. Or in general, at least they are for serving human beings. But what is unfortunate is human beings now don't play a central role. Technological outputs are playing a central role. And because of that, human beings also try to become part of the technology. And we try to run as fast as the technology is. And we will not match to the speed of technology. Therefore, we get tired. Therefore, there is a depression. Therefore, there is low self-esteem. Therefore, there is a loneliness. Right? So therefore, it is important for all of us to learn to go within oneself. When I say go within oneself, I am talking about your or our inner resources, which unfortunately is untapped so far, more or less. I use the word rich in internal resources. The power that's lying within you cannot be found anywhere. But that inner resources is untouched so far. So the Buddhist teaching of mindfulness meditation is to know yourself. The importance of knowing yourself from Buddhist viewpoint is not only for this life, but for many lives to come. Knowing yourself means knowing the terms and the intricacies of how your emotions function, how your mind function, and then get habituated many of these positive emotions, so that from life to life, you prepare a continuity of the self, continuity of the mind, which is full of wisdom, which is full of insight, which is full of compassion. So then there is a guarantee that for many lives, or if you have difficulty understanding many lives, then at least for the rest of your life, if you start cultivating this, inner resources, inner qualities like wisdom, compassion, and so forth, it is 100% sure that you will fare very well for the rest of your life. Even in those times when there is ups and downs in life. There may be ups and downs in life, but your mind will be stable all the time. That's one reason that people become monks and nuns. Because when you become a monk and a nun, when you get ordained, then many of the ordinary glamorous ways of life, the possibility to wear all kinds of clothes of yellow color, black color, green color, multicolor, every day you change your shirt, your pants, different colors. So it's really like kind of attractive life. So when you get ordained, you need to forego these attractions, superficial attractions. I'm not against that, but honestly speaking, superficial attractions. And then you are not allowed to marry, right? So all the so-called funds of this life are curtailed. Not to unnecessarily torture these people who want to get ordained, but to ensure that there is a continuous happiness, stable happiness, not ups and downs. So practicing kind of monks and nuns, they should be able to live a very stable life. Whereas ordinary people who have a family, who get married, who enjoy all these sensual pleasures, on the one hand, they are very happy on one day, the next day, very unhappy. So there is like too much ups and downs, which leads to blood pressure, tension, suppression, so forth, right? So the life will be, for example, our life is very clearly depicted in all the movies, including Indian movies or any other movies that you watch. When you watch this movie, what is depicted in this movie is basically depiction of how you live your life. So normally, most of these movies, the main theme of that movie is sex and violence. If these things are there, actor, actress chasing each other, then sex, and then anybody coming in between, violence, If these things are there, then you say, oh, the movie is so good, it's very dramatic, you see. If it is not there, then you normally say, oh, it's a slow movie. You see, that's how we think. But if you think carefully, if you go less with all these sensual pleasures, you may have less fleeting pleasures, but you will have more long-lasting happinesses. So therefore, it is highly, highly important to go within oneself and explore the capacity of mind and engage in mindfulness, meditation, and so forth, right? Then because today's talk is primarily for the Gurukul students, I want to say a few words about this, what Gurukul. Guru is derived from the Sanskrit root. Gu means signifying ignorance, and Ru means remover. So Guru or teacher is somebody who helps remove the ignorance of the student. He helps you to uncover your own intrinsic nature. He helps you to uncover your intrinsic nature. Not just giving feel-good teachings, but helps you to uncover your intrinsic nature. As I said, we leave our inner resources untouched. So Guru helps you to uncover, to know this intrinsic nature, rather than imposing a doctrine upon you. Just as a person is not enriched by a loan, so a person is not truly enlightened by a second-hand enlightenment. So information, it's not just for information. It's more for knowledge and even more for wisdom. So the true Guru is one who fathoms the depth or shallowness of the people before beginning to teach. The traditional Guru-Shishya relationship or Guru-student relationship had particular importance to ancient India. When students would grow up under the canopy of their Guru as a member of the Gurukul or teacher's family, the student would drive a multi-dimensional education. It's so important. And it is because of this that great thinkers like Einstein, he said, these days teachers bring havoc to the life of the students because they always ask what the child doesn't know, but never encourage their potential, their talent, right? So beyond providing formal education, the Guru imparted an ethical perspective, ethics, the importance of guiding values was emphasized. However, in modern times, the role of the Guru and the Gurukul system of education has been substantially bypassed, ignored. While the emphasis in former times was on helping students fulfill their potentialities and develop their consciousness, the education system has a new mandate today. That is to train students to survive and succeed in a cutthroat environment in which professional advancement and material aggrandizement are the only recognized emblem of success. Again, this morning I had a very useful discussion. Somebody who came from London, who so there she used the word this talk not of the shareholder, which is a word used in the business section, shareholder. Now they are using the word not shareholder but stakeholder, because we are all in stake, whether you have a direct investment of money or not, but we all have a stake. You see, stakeholder, right? So only using this material development as an emblem of success is, I think, misplaced. The other day, yesterday in the evening, I was participating a program of science exhibition in Sarah College. So there, one question that they asked me was that try as much as you can, but at the end of the day, people will go after money, wealth, or success. So how are you going to help these students stay in the spiritual practice, stay in the development of ethics and morality and so forth? And I answered by saying, because they don't know the meaning of value. Meaning of value. Then I started explaining by saying, in terms of value of the money and external wealth, it may have certain amount of value, but that value is something that is temporary. It's not going to benefit you forever. Right? So these inner values, they will be there with you forever. In all the ups and downs of your life, they will be there. Your friends will die, your family members will die, your relatives will die. So whatever is outside of you, try as much as you can, but they cannot be with you all the time. Then also we are talking about achieving personal long-lasting happiness, right? This is important because, as somebody correctly said, among people, you spend the rest of your life until you die. Other people like your parents, relatives, how long they will be with you, not so sure. But it is you, your body, with whom you have to spend the rest of your life. Whether you go to the bathroom, whether you go to sleep, whether you travel, it is you are the person with whom you have to live. So Buddhist teachings are basically saying, this being the case, how best you can take care of yourself through personal reflection, awareness, alertness, mindfulness, meditation, and so forth. So therefore, these practices are not only for nirvana enlightenment, that these practices are so useful in our day-to-day life. Right? Right? Okay. So let me say, because as they have requested, let me say a little bit about what meditation. I don't know what is the time now. I think I can speak a little bit. So now in the case of Buddhist meditation, before I speak meditation, I should say a few words about the Buddhist view, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist way of life, and Buddhist meditation. Buddhist view or Buddhist philosophy is philosophy or view of seeing everything as interdependent, interconnected. And if you're somebody who has very good understanding of interconnectedness of everything, then that should be reflected in your way of life, your conduct. So as His Holiness says, your way of life and conduct should be non-violent, because if you are violent with your environment, with the people with whom you are closely connected, then not only other people, you will also be the one who will suffer, because it's really like your hand going and harming your feet, on which you are very much dependent, very much closely related. Right? So now this connection between the view and the conduct should be best understood through study, listening, thinking, and more important, meditation. Out of these three processes of study, listening, thinking, and meditation, listening is very important. More important than listening is thinking, because it's by thinking that you will be able to develop personal conviction. Developing personal conviction is not important. You need to make it, then gradually you need to get habituated with that thing on which you have the conviction. So that is called meditation. Doing something, the positive things, doing repeatedly, so that it becomes part of your life. So compassion becomes not something, a subject that to be talked about, but it becomes part of your life. Right? So therefore meditation is important. So now how to do the meditation, or what is the process of meditation? As I mentioned already, meditation is not something that you do only in the morning or only in the evening, although different, suitable times are suggested. But meditation is something that you may do throughout your life. All these teachings are for meditation. So when it comes to doing a proper meditation, you need to know how to prepare it, and how to do the actual meditation, and then how to conclude it successfully. Now there are many preparations to be done. I'm not going to talk about it. Normally we talk about the 6 preparatory practices and things like that, which if there is enough, we can talk about it, but that's not so important right now. But in preparation, what is really important is the motivation. Before you sit on the meditation seat, you should come with a motivation that I'm doing this meditation not just for me, but for helping all suffering sentient beings. Imagine the suffering of sentient beings. It's really unthinkable. In today's you can see, for example, right now, during the last 1 or 2 days, this is a very unfortunate, earthquake that happened in Morocco. That already, they say, it can be more. They say already 3,000 people killed, and the death is still, the number of death is still more, I think. So this is just one small example. Such unfortunate happenings are happening everywhere. The people that are killed in the Himachal flood, the people that are killed in flood in Beijing, and Hong Kong, and then so many places, you see. Right? So first of all, we have a short life. Maximum life that we live is 100 years. Even within that life, you encounter so many problems due to natural disasters, which is to some extent understandable. But many of the suffering that you encounter are, as His Holiness says, unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering means men create sufferings. And why should we create suffering over other people? Because of ignorance. Because of ignorance. Because of ignorance, you think the only solution is to fight like animals. Whereas if you, as I said, if you really think very carefully about your life, one or two of the most important features of human being is the capacity to speak and this amazing human intelligence. So this capacity to speak is basically saying that if there's a problem, then solve the problem through dialogue. No. Speak to each other. Not just jump upon each other to try to kill each other, just like the lions and tigers do. The lions and tigers, it's understandable because they have no language to discuss and find the solution. Whereas human beings have this very, capable language. So we can sit down and talk, have dialogue, negotiation. That is what His Holiness is doing with the Chinese government. Despite their ruthlessness and destruction, His Holiness still says, let us solve this problem through dialogue, through negotiation. And this is possible because we have this amazing human intelligence. If we use it, think carefully, then we can find all solutions. But unfortunately today, this intelligence, this amazing intelligence is used in the wrong way. This intelligence is now used to prepare nuclear bombs. Several thousands of nuclear bombs are existing today in this world. One nuclear bomb has this capacity to kill millions. I mean, it's really like awful and pathetic that how can we afford to go in such a direction when there is already so much suffering, you see. So therefore, we need to meditate and think about these issues. It's not just the traditional style of, meditation alone. The meditation and mindfulness should be not only used in that level, but also in solving day-to-day problems of your society, your family, and the world at large. So therefore, as I was saying, the motivation is the key thing, first of all. It is the propeller. If you're thinking your motivation is good, everything will be good. If your motivation is wrong, then everything will go in the wrong direction. So therefore, one should develop proper motivation. Okay? And then having developed this proper meditation, then as is suggested in Buddhist texts, that you should find a comfortable seat. Comfortable seat means that the rear side of the meditation seat should be slightly uprest, so that when you continue to sit in that meditation seat for a long time, you don't easily get tired, right? And then your body should be erect. And in the Buddhist teaching, it talks about 5 benefits of keeping your body erect, because this is number one, something that is forbidden by the Buddha. And the second is there is a benefit of your being able to continue your meditation for a longer time. And it is also said, I don't understand this one, but it also says that when you observe such an erect posture, you will not be easily harmed by human beings and non-human beings. See? There must be a great meaning there. I leave it to you to explore. Even sitting erect, letting the energy flow smoothly, and the mind which is riding on the energy also becomes clear. When your mind is clear and peaceful, that's my understanding. When your mind is clear and peaceful, undisturbed, nobody can harm you. Because the so-called harm that we normally think is not necessarily harm done by someone else, but because of your suspicion. Even when nobody is doing anything, you think, oh, this person is looking at me like this. She must be thinking something nasty about me. He must be thinking something nasty about me. Because your mind is disturbed. When your mind is disturbed, you see the whole world in conflict. Right? So therefore, just sitting erect has so much benefit. And that way also, sitting erect doesn't mean that you should be rigid, but it really means relaxing. And then based on that, the clarity of the mind will increases. And then you sit in a cross-legged posture. It may be full length cross-legged posture, or half-length cross posture, or you can even sit on a chair, as the Maitreya Buddha did, depending upon your capacity. All right? And then if you're Buddhist, then you should recite this citations of taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and taking refuge, cultivation of bodhicitta. Repeat this stanza 3, 4, 5 times, until you get some kind of really feeling within yourself. Genuine sense of taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, with the understanding of the fear of the samsara, and with the wish to get liberated from this fear. And then it is not just your problem. The problem is, the overwhelming problem is there in the whole world. So it is really unwise and, short-sighted of me if I think only about my liberation. So therefore, think about cultivation of bodhicitta to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that is the motivation, right? And then in some cases, you use this swastika. Okay, swastika, not similar to what is found in the Nazi, practice, but here swastika basically is almost like a diamond or vajra, which symbolizes stability in the success of your practice, just as the Buddha did. And then there is also tradition of using putting a kusha grass or something that has purifying effect under your meditation seat. Okay, and after having done this, then you observe the 7 or 8 Vairocana postures. 7 or 8 Vairocana postures. The first one is leg. Leg should be cross-legged, as I already mentioned, and then hand should be the left hand should be down, and on which you should put the right hand, then form a kind of triangle, and then make sure that the tip of that finger touches at the level of your navel, which will automatically straighten your body. Okay, as I already mentioned, that straightening your body doesn't mean that your body should become rigid. Okay, but to ensure that there is a proper flow of energy and mind. And then your waist also should be erect, and the 2 elbows should not touch your body. You open it a little bit so there is proper flow of wind. It's like almost making a ventilation, so that you don't become sweaty or things like that. And then your teeth and your lips and your tongues, they're in their natural position. And it is recommended that the tongue should touch the upper palate gently to make sure that during the meditation you don't get thirsty, and also to make sure that when you do long meditation, the saliva does not fall down. The prostration means becoming humble. When you become humble, you become receptive to all the teachings. And that's the idea. And then also your head should not be bent too much forward, because that invites sleepiness, laziness, as we can easily see. So it should be slightly bent, but not too much forward. So in addition to that, your eye should be gazing towards the 2 lobes of the noses, not try to force to see it, but just be gazing towards it. And His Holiness, during his teaching, he made this joke. People who have a very small flat nose may have difficulty, but many of the foreigners who have big noses, they will have no difficulty. Anyway, so these are the 7. So in addition to that, if you add the breathing, then that is called 7 or 8 Vairocana postures. So sometimes it's 7, sometimes it is 8, because the purpose of meditating on the breath is to bring your mind to a neutral state. Because if your mind is very discursive and very excited, then there is no possibility for you to meditate. So therefore, first, in order to cool down the mind and make it neutral, you watch your breath. And breath is something that is there with you. So that's the reason. Okay. So I think I'll stop here. Maybe it may be more interesting to ask more to invite more questions, right? Okay, questions.
Thank you very much, Geshe. We have a long list of questions from our community of listeners.
Very good.
I will address some of those to you, Geshe.
Mm.
I noticed that a lot of our listeners have spoken about different manifestations of suffering, whether it is a family member being diagnosed with cancer and experiencing slow grief, or about your parents passing away, or falling apart. And so a lot of our listeners, Geshe-la, are asking you about how do we, in these experiences of deep suffering, how do we truly let go and stop grasping? And what
Yes,
are the
that's what they are saying. Understand the law of nature. Develop a larger perspective. Because we suffer, as I also mentioned, we suffer unnecessarily. Unnecessarily because we don't know how to address these issues. Having failed to understand the law of nature, then we encounter these problems, then we suffer, right? To give you, for example, a clear example. If you're somebody who has this deeper understanding, then meeting is parting. This law of nature, meeting is parting. Whether the meeting is in the form of somebody becoming your parents, somebody becoming a husband or wife, friend, things like that, but meeting is parting. Stop parting. If you don't like parting, don't meet. Right? Right? And then, of course, every conditioned thing is impermanent. So everyone has to go. If you have that good understanding, then because of this understanding, you have this understanding, okay, this so-called my parents or relatives, friends, they are here right now with me because of certain karmic, forces. We are today together as parents and children, or as husband and wife, whatever, or teacher and student. Then ask the next question. Yeah.
Geshe-la, we also have one of our listeners who is asking that how do we identify when what we are experiencing is true long-lasting happiness instead of fleeting pleasure, since you shared that during your session, Geshe-la. The difference between true long-lasting happiness and fleeting pleasure. When we're experiencing that, how do we distinguish between the two, Geshe-la?
Distinguish. For example, pleasure is like the pleasure that you get when you are tasting a bar of chocolate. When you are tasting the bar of chocolate, you get that pleasure. But having tasted this bar of chocolate, you will never get a continuous experience saying that since I tasted that bar of chocolate, I become happy. Right? But on the other hand, if you develop the right mental perspective, for example, with a compassionate attitude, you genuinely help somebody who is in need. That recollection will bring true happiness for a long, long time to come. So there's a big difference between the sensual pleasures and mental happiness. So mental happiness comes through right mental perspective and right understanding of the way things are. Pleasures are basically sense gratifications. Okay. So again, saying the same thing, anything that is related to enjoying material pleasures are not long lasting. Anything that is related to mental cultivation leads to long lasting happiness. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Geshe-la, do we have time for a few more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Geshe-la, one of our listeners by the name of Ritung Naga has raised a question about the point that you shared about the futility of living in the past and the need to focus on the present. They've shared an example about the case of a child who has experienced severe trauma in their childhood, which was committed by a loved one, which makes it very difficult for the individual to live a healthy present because the traumatic memories of the past keep interfering with the present. And so they're
Yes.
asking that what is your advice on addressing traumas and conflicts in one's own personal life, and how does one go about it, Geshe-la?
No, this is easier said than done. Not very easy, I know, especially if you had suffered that trauma when you're at a very young, malleable age. I understand that will make a big impact and very difficult to restore. But even here, that's why we talk so much about having love and compassionate atmosphere everywhere. So if there is love and compassionate, in the environment, in the family, in the society where that person lives, then they can really help their child in such a way that gradually the traumas are healed, you see. But on the other hand, if the child has suffered so much when he or she was just a very young child, and then also the society is such that there is no love and kindness and help forthcoming, then it's very difficult to heal, very difficult to heal, right? So love and affection is something that is very important, not only in oneself, but in the mind of everybody, right? For example, just today, one of my, friend came to see me and I saw that they have a child which is physically not healthy, but the parents are looking after that child so compassionately, so attentively. I have met a number of my friends who are doing like that. This child was like disabled right from a very young age, and I have one friend whose child is now, I think, in her mid 30s. So the parents were looking after this disabled child who is really, really disabled. And I was amazed. I'm just talking about love and compassion. These people are practicing for 30, 40 years. And every time they go out and come home, then they go to meet her, they kisses her, my darling, how are you? I mean, imagine, you see, this is what we need. This is what we need. If there is such a thing, then of course it will help, solve the traumatic experiences also. Then if you are a little bit grown up person, for example, in the case of the Tibetan, you know, uh, Tibetans who have suffered under the Chinese operation, I know a number of people, again, senior people who had earlier, have this exposure to the Buddhist training and practice. So because of this training, even when they encounter trauma and difficulties, for example, there is one monk I know very well who was in Chinese prison for over 17 years. He's a senior monk from the Namgyal monastery. And His Holiness knew him before in Lhasa. So finally, this monk managed to come to Dharamsala, and His Holiness one day invited him to come and see him. And they were talking, and His Holiness asked, when you were in prison for so many years, what were those occasions when you really encountered big problem? Did you encounter some big problem? He said, on one or two occasions, I really, encountered a big problem. And then His Holiness asked, what was the problem? Was it the problem of, the risk to your life? He said, no, 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 no. The problem of losing compassion for Chinese torturers. Can you imagine? Because until that time, he was all the time not worried so much about his inconveniences and problems, but he was developing compassion to the Chinese torturers. Because of the belief in past life and future lives, he was saying that I'm right now suffering, but the Chinese torturers will suffer more in the future lives. Poor people, they have no idea, they're ignorant. So he was developing compassion. But sometimes the torture was so intense that he faced this threat of losing compassion. That was his worry, imagine. So what I'm saying is if you're a little bit grown up and have this culture of love and compassion, then that will help you, solve many problems. Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-la. There's one question from one of our listeners by the name of Karanveer Singh Chawla, who's asking you, Geshe-la, what is the best way for young people to find a meaningful direction and a purpose in life?
Purpose of life is happiness. In order for happiness, as I said, for happiness there is no shortcut. For experiencing pleasure, there are shortcuts. But for experiencing happiness, you need to use your human intelligence and do those things which will more or less guarantee more long-lasting happiness. That you need to find out. For example, anger or jealousy, which is something that we uh, happen to cultivate all the time. But then think how far anger will give you that satisfaction, that happiness. Can you remain angry for the rest of your life to get happiness or that satisfaction or being able to defeat somebody or say nasty things to some other people? No, it's very clear. Instead, if you develop genuine wish to help others, even if you say some kind words, right, that will bring tremendous amount of happiness. And you, as I already mentioned, that those good things that you do, the small things that you do, you will be able to enjoy it for the rest of your life. Recalling that on such and such a day, I helped such and such person, that person was very happy, she smiled, he smiled. You recall this, you're really happy, right? So happiness is basically very much related to your mental attitude, your mind, not so much about external facilities. Okay.
Geshe, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I jokingly tell people, people ask me, just as do you have asked, Geshe, do you have time? Then I always answer by saying, the only thing I have is time.
Thank you, Geshe. One of our listeners, Geshe, has asked this question, that in today's world, people are suffering from various mental illnesses like depression, spoke about experiencing mental illnesses like schizophrenia and other neurological disorders. How do you think, Geshe, they will stay motivated in life, and how can they perform meditation and calm the mind?
No, it depends. Some people who are physically disabled, and based on the physical, derangement or disability, they may have depression, other things, which is in which area you need to take more medical treatment. It is maybe unwise to ask them to meditate and things like that because their mind is incapable, right? Whereas in other cases, if people are not, mentally unsound, if people are mentally sound, then you can help them teach meditation, not necessarily just the Buddhist meditation, but meditation is basically a technique which everybody can adopt. So meditation, as I said, meditation basically means getting habituated with good ways of life, adopting good lifestyle, and that will help you a long time. For example, during the COVID-19 experience, especially in the West, it happened in many places, but especially in the West, normally, people are very fond of socializing. They have this dinner out, lunch out, then weekend, excursions and things like that. So they are, more or less in association with people, right? And then suddenly, because of this COVID-19, you are asked to, remain inside the house, and experience the lockdown. Many people don't know how to live alone. We have seen this very clearly. The Buddhist mind training teachers, I was reading one teaching of one Buddhist master, Kadamba master, who long time, said that the problem with us is we don't know how to live alone and also don't know how to live with others. So we should be good in one of these things, you see. You should be good in living with others means you can live happily with others if you have this friendship, loving kindness, compassion, then it will be wonderful to live with others. Or you should know how to live alone, just like the great meditators, Tibetan meditators and others who move into the high mountain, remain alone, not for one day or 1 month, but for many years. Some of them spend their whole life living in the high mountain in solitude. They never suffer from loneliness. Solitude is important. Solitude doesn't bring loneliness. Loneliness is there when you are mentally unsound. So these days, people who live in big cities like New Delhi, where millions of people are living there. But there is somebody there living and surrounded by millions of people, but there's somebody who is suffering from loneliness. So this is clearly a clear depiction of your mental attitude, right? So therefore, it is important to. I strongly encourage that very often you should practice solitude in your house, also at least 20 minutes just by yourself. And think about meaning of human life. Try to explore, bring out some of your inner resources. It's very important. Unfortunately, most of us don't do that at all. You don't know how to live with yourself. If you don't know how to live with yourself, how are you going to live with others? Right? Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-la. And there's one last question from one of our listeners, Sering Love, who's asked, Geshe, I realize that we all live in a conflict zone from the time we start our day till the time we hit the bed. We're expected to fill certain responsibilities at home, at work, and other spheres, and live up to so many people's expectations. This often includes disappointment, pain, hurt, disagreement, and not everybody is capable of running away or getting detached from such situations. I want to ask Geshe-la, how can we conduct ourselves mindfully, calmly, and stay detached in such situations?
Yeah, first of all, we need to understand that practice is not easy. Okay. Number two, you also need to understand even the Buddha could not satisfy everybody. So long as just like the reflection of the possibilities of getting a very clear reflection of the moon in the water, in the water that is there in your pot. Okay, if you want to get a very clear reflection of the moon in the water in your pot, then first the water in the pot should be still. If it is shaky, dusty, even if the moon is full moon and bright, that water in the bowl will not be able to have a clear reflection of their moon. And that is not the fault of the moon, but it is fault of the water, which is number one, moving, or it is dirty. So similarly, when our mind is not prepared, it is dirty, it's not receptive, and so forth, then it's difficult to get all the benefit. But from your side, what is really important is, when you help other people, you help without expecting anything in return as much as possible. And that is possible if you have genuine love and affection to that person, right? Don't expect anything. And then if you don't expect anything, then because of other people's attitude, in many cases you will be able to help. In some cases you may not be able to help, but that is not your fault. From your side, as I said right in the beginning, your motivation should be correct, and then there should not be any personal kind of agenda or concern for name and fame, recognition. I recall this teaching very well. There was one teacher, Tibetan teacher, who used to say that I taught so many people, I give teaching to so many people, but I never expected even a thank you. And the reason, he said, was I never expected even a thank you because there is nobody who is not suffering. So his concern was how to alleviate and reduce the suffering. He was not expecting anything. So the problem lies if you expect something, you do something, then people might say, you expect thank you, you expect recognition, then you are in trouble. So that part has to be changed. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Those were all the questions that our listeners asked us today. So,
okay.
Geshe-la, thank you very much on behalf of the foundation and our community of listeners. We express deep, deep gratitude to you, Geshe-la, for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
For allowing us to draw on your wisdom and for sharing so generously with us. We look forward to 2 more days of listening to you and learning from you. We're also very sorry to all our listeners for the quality of sound. We know that it was not up to mark and we'll truly work on it. A big thank you to everyone. We have almost 150 people who are still here with us at the end of the session. So thank you everyone for joining and for making this evening so meaningful. We hope you'll join us tomorrow and day after to continue our sessions with Geshe Lhakdor. That is on the 13th and 14th of September. So deep gratitude and have a very good night, everyone.